Hello everybody, welcome back. A new year, a new season. This is London Men's Fashion Autumn Winter 19. Happy New Year to everybody. Before starting this panel about Per Götesson, I would like to thank Cartel for this beautiful chair that you probably won't see very much. And I would like to acknowledge the fact that we are sitting in SHOWstudio gallery, surrounded by this beautiful show that it's still up for a few weeks until the end of January, called 100 Women, dedicated to the 100 years of the female suffrage, where 100 models send us a photo of themselves with the most powerful look they ever wore, and those looks, those photos were illustrated by artists chosen by our gallery director, Bex Cassie. So here it is, and you will see it during the whole season of panels until the end of January. So hello everybody, I have a fantastic panel of new people. All these people have not been on one of our panels yet. We're going to discuss Per Götesson, which I guess means son of God in Swedish. And I would like you to introduce yourself before starting.
Start with me?
Yes.
Cool. Hi, I'm Max Barnett. I'm the editor-in-chief of Pilot magazine. I'm also a photographer.
I'm Luca, and I'm half of the brand Jordan Luca.
I'm Bowen, and I'm the other half of Jordan Luca.
I'm Bryant, and I'm the senior buyer at Machine A.
So it's great, we have the retail, we have the designers, and we have the editor, so we can discuss with very many different angles. So the show has happened, and I was there, and some of us were there. By the way, thank you so much, Jordan and Luca, for being here just after your show, your presentation that happened this afternoon, and it was very good. But anyway, the show had happened, we've seen it, it was very interesting, and it was not surprising, it was, I think it was very faithful to Per's signature in a way. There were many elements of his signature that came back, but before actually going into it and seeing it, I would like to have an idea of what you thought, what you've seen, have you seen it? What was your first impression?
I think my first impression would be that I appreciate his use of colour. I think that's consistent throughout the seasons, something that I'm drawn to. I guess I would say I'm more of like a normcore dresser, so I think that I can actually see wearability in a lot of the pieces for someone who, like, for what I would actually wear as well, which I think is something that
it's important in a very creative place like London, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think also that depends on what kind of your angle is as a designer and where you want to go. But it's clear that he's really interested in this kind of like functional wear, which has been apparent throughout. But I feel in this one really
he famously said once, "I want to design clothes that can be worn." So, you know, that's one of his staples.
Which I think is a strong staple to have, at least for me. I do appreciate the creative side of the industry as well. I think that for me I could see, and still actually you can see with the denim, some of the really creative things that he's done with denim again. Yeah, this look actually, look 13 I think it was. I really like
that was an upside down, no, inside out pair of jeans, which I think is very, very interesting. What else? Who else wants to say something?
I know that Per always does denim, and I was really surprised and like very interested with the tailoring that he did this season. I think a lot of the trousers and the blazers were like really well done, and I'm very excited to see it in real life and do the re-see.
You, Machine A carries Per Götesson,
yes,
right?
we carry Per Götesson, yeah.
Every time I watch a Per Götesson show, because I love him, the first thing is always a stare at the trousers. Because for me, what's for me so good of Per, and for me so fascinating, how much attention he put on the trousers. Because I always think, like, from a designing perspective, it's always easy to forget about trousers and concentrate more about tops and drapes and tailoring and outerwear. And you kind of always forget about trousers. And every time I look at his picture, the first thing I look is the detail on the trousers. There is every single look where there is something going on the trouser you want to look at.
That's an interesting point. So you're saying that the creative appeal of a collection usually comes more from the tops?
It generally is. I think we tend to design, as designers, we always tend to, especially when you start to sell, you start to think, okay, what, you step into making overcoats and suits, things that actually make you more money, things that sell more. So I think you tend to go from the top to the bottom. But like we were, discussing before, but when you get dressed, for example, you always put the pants on first. And I think as a designer, the most obvious things sometimes are the things you forget. But I love that Per this season has kind of stepped into, you mentioned about he spoke about his wearability, about wanting to make things that are wearable. But this really feels like he's stepping more into that, into more wearability. The range is bigger. The sartorial element to his collection has got bigger and is really pushing it. Per, I always think is a really, he's got a real discipline, a real Scandinavian discipline, which I really admire actually about him. And he's pushed that every single season. But I think now you feel like it's getting kind of more commercial, and it's really interesting because it's still got his DNA.
That's, sorry, I cut you.
No, I was just going to agree.
But I think the DNA thing is very important, because there's one thing that I remember from last collection is this showing of the abs. There's always a little bit of, there's a lot of skin which is shown in the same region of a man. And there's some sensuality about it, that it's never vulgar, that it's never, I don't know, he has this ability to do it, but never too much. But there's always some skin that makes me, in the last collection, he talked a lot about sex. He was talking about his approach to sex and saying sex is very important and very natural, and sensuality and sexuality has to be in men's fashion as well, but not in an aggressive way. And I think that's probably the clearest key to understand. If we were parachuted here, we would say that's Per, I guess, right?
His whole brand identity is very strong throughout this collection. You can see with the denim, and there's different shapes of the trousers. How he played with the balloon shape of those shorts, and it kind of have this long trousers that's draping, and it's very interesting to see it in a more commercial piece. I mean, when I say commercial, it's not a bad thing. From a buyer's point of view, we love the oversized pieces, but at the same time, it needs to sell. And when we introduce these, of course, when we're in the showrooms and we're talking to the designers, we really understand the world. But our customers, they never had the interaction with the actual designers themselves. So we have to really share our perspective as buyers and choose the right pieces for them, so that they can really understand our love for Per Götesson, how they can, because it'll be a new brand for them. So they'll be like, oh, interesting. Yeah. I totally understand why you chose them, and why, all the design elements and all the little details. It's why would I rather spend money on Per Götesson and not Gucci? It's you choose to spend however you want to spend your money. But for Machine, we try to buy as much of the coolest pieces and the newest and most emerging designers. And we choose all of these amazing details, rather than have the brand name or the logos or everything. And
yeah, but for what you said, for a neophyte or for civilians, like we call them, why would they buy? I want to go back to that suit afterwards, but why would they buy Per and not Gucci, to mention someone more established? So how do you attract new people to a new brand? And that's interesting also for our duo here, Jordan, Luca. How do you become an established brand? Is it thanks to a retailer that supports you?
I think one good thing about is that with us being an independent store, we're allowed to buy as we please, and we like to buy interesting things. And also, what is really powerful with our store is that we're a very small shop. If you've been to our shop, you know it's very small. And all of our sales associates, they're all very passionate about the brands. You'll go into our store and you'll be you see this young kid who really is obsessed with Per Götesson, and he'll show you the world. He'll tell you everything about the brand.
Until you buy.
Yeah, until you buy it. But he really he shares the whole world to you. And then the customers will be oh my God, this sales associate is so passionate. I'm really drawn in. It's oh, I need to get these trousers. I don't really care about Gucci right now. I'm like, I need to buy Per Götesson, or I need to really buy the knits, because like, if you look at all the little details, it's like, you can buy a 300-pound t-shirt at Gucci, but if you maybe buy a little, you can spend a little bit more money on a Per Götesson like sweater, which is like 600 pounds. But if you look at all the little details, it's like, you know, it doesn't matter what logo you're wearing. You get to wear something new, and you get to like have a new kind of piece in your wardrobe that's not like a branded piece.
What about price and quality?
In terms of what?
In terms of this brand in particular, because sometimes people say it's not worth that price, or then when you wear it, and I'm interested also in hearing your take on this, because you produce clothes, like sometimes these brands are expensive also because the numbers are low, so you produce fewer pieces, and so the cost is higher, and so if you multiply, whatever, that we know, but sometimes then the quality, it's not following the high price. What about her?
I think Per actually does it really well. I think his quality is actually like really good for what the pieces are. The prices are a bit more expensive, but when you really like engage with the customers, they'll understand and they'll pay the money for it.
Okay, that's a good point.
I think Per doesn't really care. Per doesn't really care about what I feel from Per's collections and the way that he designs and his approach to design and seasonalities. He doesn't really care. If it's cropped and it's winter, then it doesn't really matter. If you want to buy it now or buy it next season, that's fine, because
I agree.
But I do really feel that it's you know, the price is high. Firstly, because it's beautifully made, and you can see that in the detail. And
where is it made?
It's made in London.
Oh, in London.
Made in London. There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a whole other kettle of fish.
There was this. I don't know if people can see it from these images, but there was this thing in the middle of the catwalk that I call thing, because some people called it like a capsized boat, some other called it a cradle, and it was full of all the trinkets and
like
things.
glass.
And all the memories of the childhood, and you know, that's very Per. I mean, this is I think it's his third show. It was launched I have it somewhere, in 2016 by Men. So it's a very young brand, but that's something that returns his origin, where it comes from, the reusing of materials, the using of non-noble materials. Like I said, I want to go back to that tailor piece, because the button, I was very close so I could see it. The button is a bottle top, you know, like do you call it a top? Of a drink, and it can come the way it is, or also with precious stones on it. So it's really the re-giving a new life to.
Because, you know, Per said himself, you know, he takes shit and makes it precious, and he said that himself. It's not me that say he takes shit, but what I love about Per is, you know, I spoke a bit about him, about his discipline, and I think that's very Scandinavian. But what I really appreciate as him as a designer is that he's really kind of encompassed what London is about. And, you know, because, you know, and, you know, and I know something else I know about Per is that he works with limitations. He likes limitations. We love limitations because it's a really good edit.
Define limitation, like money?
Financially, especially, yeah. Because it's a really good edit for colours, for fabrics. And I think when you've got fewer options, you are pushed as a designer to try and think inside the box, and to try and make something work.
I think that's integral though to a lot of the creative process, especially with the younger people in London who are kind of working it out. I think that having those limitations in place is what has brought about so much of the creativity that people know and love London for, really, I think.
Absolutely.
Even though his is done to a degree where it's very finished looking, very high end, which is really nice.
But which I also think it's essential to the actual then commercial success, because if you're creative for its sake, but there's nothing that people can wear, then, right? Did I say something that people will attack me for? But I think creativity for its sake, without the possibility of making it into something that you can see on people's back, probably doesn't matter.
One of the really strong parts of this collection was his continuous collaboration with Hussam. I mean, they do jewelry together. Hussam does a jewelry for Per.
It's the jewelry.
And when I was at the show, one of the things that really stood out to me was there was this glass and all of this like childhood memories. It was, I think it was a slash that he was wearing.
Yeah.
And it was, it might be like a bag strap, or it might just be like a little like over crossing.
It's called broken glass, I think. So
Yeah.
it is actual broken glass.
So like, it's so beautiful. Like, you know how you were saying with how it's like not wearable or wearable, and like he makes this like shift into like a beautiful jewelry. Like, you know, like I would really want to like collect it. Like, it's such a collector's item. It's like you kind of like get into Per's world and you buy his little shit, and then it'll become like a beautiful jewelry.
Like the jewelry in the last collection were pieces of porcelain with the images of Harry and Meghan.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Candles and the Queen Mother and the royal plate, smashed up royal plate.
He also talks about recognizing traditions, and you and I were discussing before how also for the tailoring that is never really done before, he went to Savile Row and learned from the expert. And
I really appreciated that.
Yes, and the digital, he learned, you know what I mean? He just tries to also respect the traditional way in which things are made.
Just quickly for the accessories, one thing I really noticed, because for me, like I can take or leave when you have kind of the broken glass and things. I really like it as an artistic statement, but I'm always kind of looking at things that I might want to wear. And I noticed that he even took that a step further actually and created like a brooch, it was like a ship. And that was really nice. And it kind of, that felt like more of a sellable version of the broken glass things that he was doing as well. So it kind of seems like he's taking into consideration how he can turn.
And his strengths as well.
Yeah.
Especially if it's
I really like that.
He said that this was his biggest collection of jewelry ever. But he collaborated with Sam again, you know. And then let's talk a little bit about Kathy McGee and DG Toll, where he said that she was conceiving jackets digitally. What does that, can someone explain exactly? I mean, is it designed digitally? Is it made? I read it in the press release, and honestly, and I couldn't recognize it. But
digitally rendered jackets
is that
are constructed.
Difficult question for anybody?
That might be a bit beyond my knowledge personally.
So they say she created the digital render of the jacket, so probably the pattern?
Oh, it's digital draping as well, so I think they're creating. It seems like they're creating the idea for the silhouette and the shape of the clothing digitally on a.
So there's a scanning of the body first.
Yeah, it says here there's a scanning of the body,
which is interesting because it's almost a disregard for what you're taught as a fashion, especially as a fashion student. It's a complete disregard, which I love that. It's very subversive.
No, can you explain?
Because doing something digitally, you know, you're supposed to drape on the body, using the body, using what the body will allow you to do, but doing something that way and kind of almost guessing it's very interesting way of working.
And yet he says I designed for the body. So
but he doesn't, and it kind of somehow it kind of works.
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah. What do we think about that single suspender, which is quite childish, and yet I think this look is probably the sexiest one.
Sexy.
It's so sexy.
It's because of that lower side as well.
But yet it's not too much. It's
not.
Right.
And I don't even like big pants like that, big balloon parachute pants. But I think they're very sexy. I can't deny it. You know, they are. Really.
And again, the accessory is beautiful though.
Yeah, that's the shape.
It really makes like.
Yeah, that's the shape, right? Yeah, and it's all made with glass. So. Yeah, I would like to go back to, you know, being a young designer in London, and this is probably more for you, and being on your third show and being so successful because, you know, everybody was there and he's one of the brands to follow, and then having the pressure of the retailer and making money. So how does that work, Jordan, Luca, or Luca and Jordan?
Oh, well, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure, but obviously, it depends on the vision that someone has as a brand, I guess. And my vision, our vision, is not like selling to make lots of money, but for me and for Jordan, it's like the satisfaction to see your clothes in the street, on real people. Something that you love so much doing and is out there, and someone believes in you. And And of course you have to consider things. Of course we consider lots of feedback from buyers, which I've personally found so helpful. I started to be very scared of buyers at the beginning. On the first collection, very scared to go to Paris and starting the sale campaign. But then, actually, buyers, they're amazing people, and they want to help you as well.
They're real people. They're real people.
They're real people. They give you amazing feedbacks because at the end of the day, they work with the customer.
And they're not buyers. They're not buyers for nothing. They're buyers because they're really into. So like you're speaking about, they're buyers because they like design, they like detail, they like beautiful finish, they like to sell the product, they like to see the stuff that they buy onto the customer. So they're not there for nothing.
Yeah, and do you believe in being very, how to say, selective? Like, I think that sometimes the successful brands at the beginning are the ones that don't say yes to everybody.
Yes, and I've noticed that with Per's distribution, because Per's distribution is quite small, but I really respect that, because actually what I've seen from other brands like Kottweiler, for example, who had quite a small distribution, very small, very tight, but grew it and said no. And I know people in the industry who were told no. I've heard of people being told no by them, for example, but what that does is it grows it and it nurtures it and it allows it to.
And it also gives a status to your brand. I mean, I'm not for everybody, or I am for everybody if you're a mass brand, but I mean, being able and having the power to say no, it just gives you more credibility.
I think also it's very dangerous at the beginning. Sorry to interrupt, but I think at the beginning, you as a new brand, you get seduced by the idea that you can be in this big store, this kind of mid-range store. You get seduced by it. It could potentially, sometimes we've been faced with quite big orders, but you have to say no because you will start. I think what would happen is you start to edit and start to dilute, because you are seduced by what sells in that middle market.
And I think it's really important to not jump on that so soon and too early. We have a lot of similar conversations about young photographers as well with the magazine, like people who are too ready and too green. They really want everything to happen overnight, and I think that's when a lot of poor decisions can be made in haste. And so I think that it's really important. If I were a designer, that's probably how I would approach it too, to really have a goal of a few key stockists that I was really looking for and wanted to be in, and then kind of see where you can grow it from there, as opposed to just saying yes, 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 yes.
And what if they're not the ones that you want that come to you? I know it sounds stupid, but sometimes you also need to pay rent, and eat food, and
but I think
it costs money.
I think especially in our case, I think by year, because we've been working creatively together for about 2 years, but for about 5 or 6 years even. And I think by year two, we thought, God, this is a way of life. We've got a long way to go, and here we are, 6 years later. We've done several other things, and Jordan Luca knows he's on its 3rd season. But I think you do decide that it's a way of life, and I think it's a sacrifice you make, and I think you can't sell out. You can't sell out at the point you're offering someone. You can't. You really have to stick to that. It's very difficult. It's very difficult because when you start to break and when you start to crack and you think, oh, we're starting to sell, it's really seductive.
And then it's very important to justify your prices as well. Because you have to
your prices. Oh, your prices.
Because as a new brand, and the quantities they can be good, but they're never as good as huge brands. So of course your price is going to be very high, retail. And how do you build this customer trust? You need to be in the store that people know that if I go in that store, I know that I'm going to buy a design product, I know that it's going to be amazing, I know it's going to be an amazing good quality, and I know that it's going to cost more or less that.
I think it's important as well, that you were nodding, because I think it's interesting to know from a buyer's perspective, how would you feel if one of your brands that you've stocked starts stocking it everywhere? Like, does that change how you feel about the brand and how you would buy a brand?
A little bit. But if we really love the brand, we'll continue to stock it. But I think a lot of smaller brands, they get some big offer from a huge department store, and I don't think, sometimes it's not the best decision, because they'll be like, ooh, the big name, I want to do it. But will that department store give you the support you need to grow your brand, or will it just be a one hype, one season thing
and then
where
they drop you?
Then they drop you, or they do like something like they tell you to make the pieces, and then you're on consignment, and then you're, you know,
They don't pay you.
They don't pay you.
Sounds so
So
dangerous.
sometimes that can happen, and it's the reality of this industry. But I think when young designers are choosing their, or wanting to have their stock is, like, you'll have the few key stores that you want. I mean, obviously you're not gonna get everything, but if you do get like 2 or 3 that you really want, I think you should stick with those, because if you grow so fast and you're everywhere, nobody's gonna, I mean, unless if you're a hype brand, like if you're like someone like big or something, and you wanted to do mass production. But if you want to do like a cool brand where like you want to sell to a specific customer, then you sell to the specific stores. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense for your brand to be in a store that doesn't sell your aesthetic, but then it's just there because it's there.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense for.
But what about not to mention name like the Net-a-Porter or the Mr. Porter in this case, that they don't sell one aesthetic, but they sell, you know, it's digital and they sell, let's say, to everybody. So does that help, or does that kill your appeal?
For small brands, I think.
For a brand like this, yeah.
For a brand like this, I think if it's for like Net-a-Porter or something, I don't think it's like, or Mr. Porter, I don't think it would work for them, because this is not like their target audience. Their target audience are like suits, you know, tailoring. They're not really that into getting like the more feminine or the sexy pieces, you know, from male, like male sexuality. So I don't think it would work that well. But in terms of like department stores, I think they could go for like something like Dover Street Market if they wanted something bigger than like a small store.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would like to touch upon, you just said it, the more feminine pieces. I mean, we all know that one of the important things today in fashion is gender neutrality, and we've seen, you know, the beginning of London Fashion Week was art school. It's almost not even neutral, it's almost women's fashion on men, and then it ended last night with Charles Jeffrey, which, you know, is the king of queer and gender neutral. So where does, well, that was such a beautiful show, by the way, but anyway, where does Per stand in this? Maybe I'm asking you, the critic, more like this. So is there, I mean, how much does it appeal to this trend, which is not a trend, but is now like a way of living and a necessity?
It's more understated, isn't it? He kind of he's taking pieces of this gender neutrality, but it's still in a way that has this, like the tailoring is soft, which I kept reading on the press release. It's about this, he's taking pieces of typically masculine clothing and creating it in a way that isn't overly gender specific. But obviously, I mean, to me, I look at it and I do see menswear generally, but I don't know.
I would definitely wear that suit.
Yeah, and this is the thing. I could see you wearing this suit.
Doubt a second. But let me, and still with you. I mean, in his last, I think it was his last couture artisanal collection, John Galliano talking about his artisanal collection for Margiela, he was talking exactly about that, saying it's just adding masculinity to female clothes or vice versa. So it's not really cross-gendering, if that means something. I mean, isn't that a little bit in that category, this, where there are some feminine touch in the cuts?
I mean, what is like gender neutral? Is it like a box? Like, do we walk out in a box? Do you know what I mean? Like, are we just going to be in big tent-shaped clothing, and then that's no gender because we look like a tent? So, you know, for me at least, this is
it's
like,
no,
it's just something, you know, which is also amazing. I mean, I'd love it if someone came out with a load of tents, but for me, yeah, it has that kind of feminine edge to a masculine collection, and the sexuality. Actually, really, the coat really reminds me of was it Chris Tucker in Fifth Element? Did you ever see he had this leopard print coat in the Fifth Element? And actually, this is, but in a way, that's kind of like it's taking a piece of that and adding it in there. So
it's very studied, this, isn't it? It's very studied. It's very studied into what is binary, but what is typical masculinity, what is typical femininity, and let me play with that. Let me fuck with that.
Inside of a denim coat. If you read it in a caption,
a muff, you know, which men's designer last made a muff? I don't know. Or on the runway. I mean, come on, it's great. I love it.
Nipple can say everything as well, isn't it?
I actually think the leopard print was very interesting for me as well. It's something I ended up doing an extensive Google searching about the history of leopard print and kind of why it's... I was just going through each of the eras. Well, it seems that the 60s was really the boom of the leopard print industry, mostly because of the supermodels that David Bailey was photographing, and this kind of Jean Shrimpton, and this kind of became really popular in the 60s, it seems, but it's been around since like the 20s. But I was just really interested in generally the history of the leopard print and why does it keep coming back? Why is it so pervasive, and why does everybody make an article about it being back in again, like every 18 months to 2 years? So I found that was a very interesting thing, but not usually in a menswear perspective. It's usually all of the articles I was looking at were very female fashion focused. So it was a nice nod to that history of femininity in a sense as well.
It's quite new to see leopard print on.
Well, at least in my experience, I don't have an extensive knowledge on you know, leopard print in menswear, but from what I could see, like from the research that I was doing, it seemed like it was more female focused, but also it's seen in a very kind of sexual cat-like perspective at times too. So it's interesting.
It's very sensual.
Yeah, and so that's again like another touch of sensuality and sexuality that has kind of continued through his collections, but he's using it in a way that's very controlled, like a microdose in a way, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, and does this gender neutrality in fashion take away the stigma or the categorizing of sexual preferences, like gay or straight, or I mean. You sell clothes to straight men. I mean, what happens in the young people? I don't know how to express it better, but do you see what I mean? Who's wearing what, and does it still matter? I hope not, but I don't know the reality.
It doesn't matter for us. I mean,
for you, I know, but what about your customer?
So how we VM the shop is, we kind of VM it as a very genderless approach. I mean, we do have a section where it's like menswear, and then we have women's wear, but then we have like different clients. You know, people are like girls are like going on the men's side, guys are going to the girls' side. So, but then of course we'll have like the customers that are more traditional, and they'll come to the store and like, where's the men's section? Where's the women's section? We're like, this is the men's section, but there's some women's pieces in there, but feel free to let us know if you need any help, you know, kind of thing. So they'll be a bit surprised, like, this is for men? And then we're like, yeah, it is. And do you like it? And they're like, no. You know, but it's interesting because like a lot of our other customers, like our core customers, they'll be like, oh my God, I love the way that you guys VM the clothes, because we mix all of our brands. So like people can like buy a Marchetto outfit, but then they can style it with a Per knit underneath. So it's like they can mix things that wouldn't be like what they're used to, because you know most department stores or most stores, they have like one rail, one brand, but you don't really get like identified to like new brands. All you see is like that specific brand, so you don't really learn and you don't really get new pieces.
But is retail following this definite shift in society? I mean, I'm from a different generation and I totally get it and I love it and I think that it's amazing, but then you go into retail, the classic retail spaces, and it's still women, men. Very separate, very different look of the store, very, I don't know, different sizes.
Interesting, because we
how do you tackle this?
A couple of seasons ago, you know, we went to some showrooms, because we sell in Paris, and we go to showrooms. You know, we go look at showrooms in Milan and Paris, and we're around. And what I noticed a couple of years ago, for a few seasons, quite a few seasons, they had the men's department, the men's showroom, the women's showroom, and a genderless showroom.
Oh.
And that kind of was a bit of a thing. Yeah, it was a bit of a thing. It was a bit of a thing for a while, and then last season, I'm like, hang on a minute, where's my genderless area? And it seems to just have kind of
disappeared.
Just disappeared, or it just seems to have been absorbed into the fashion. So maybe it's just. Maybe
I don't know. For me, I would be more of a fan of the general integration of everything, as opposed to boxing things into their own room. Especially because, you know, like what you guys are doing, it's more of an experience, and the customer can come in, and if they like a piece, why does it matter if it's you know, a women's wear piece or a men's wear piece? If it fits them, if it looks good.
Much more confident, I think, to be able to see. You know,
what about sizes? Because there are differences in sizes. Like, if I like the corset I've seen in your presentation today, hint, hint. No, that's a joke. But I mean, what about? We can't deny that women's and men's body are different.
For sure. Yeah.
So how does that happen?
Yeah, but for example, that corset that we did, like, as soon as we did a corset in men's size, and as soon as I tried on, I kept it on for 5 days in the studio, because the feeling of having a corset is amazing. If more straight men or
we hated
a corset
all our life.
who wear a corset, they will feel great. So,
Help with my
you know,
posture.
like, like make your backbone straight again. But
try to wear one of those where you needed someone to pull it, you know,
pull it from the back.
2 centuries ago. That wasn't very comfy. But yeah, that's something that I'm really interested in. You know, going around shows yesterday, I felt so happy to see, you know, these, and they were happy shows to see these mix, and it doesn't matter. You don't know who is what and who loves who, and I think it's amazing. But then you go into the retail spaces, and maybe apart from Machine A, I can't mention a lot. Maybe Dover Street Market, they're pretty cool in a way, but you know, there's very few that conform to the shift in society.
That's why everyone should just come to Machine A.
A little bit of publicity. So what else? You have lots of notes. I want to know
actually,
what else about the collection, yeah.
I mean, well, I'm sorry to backtrack, but I was also thinking about the gender neutrality in terms of an editorial perspective as well.
Yeah.
So we have a breakdown in the magazine of kind of like, we will have a specific sections for 16 pages women's wear story, 14 pages menswear story, and I'm finding more and more each season that that's becoming less of a criteria for us, and less of a, we don't really care whether it's a women's wear or menswear, or whether there's a complete mix. We actually prefer to just see a mix in every issue. I think is really interesting, but we still do follow some kind of structure to whether we're featuring a women's wear story or a men's wear story, which obviously affects the pieces.
How do your advertisers feel about it?
Well, we don't have any.
But let me answer that. Let me answer that. When I edited for a while a magazine, and I wanted to do a one brand 25 pages, which I succeeded in doing in the end, but I also wanted from the brand men, women, summer, I wanted some specific things, and of course, you know, our fashion director came back and said, the PR said, forget it, no way. Luckily, I had a very high level contact in the brand. I called the CEO. I said, look, this is really something new that I want to do, and I think your brand right now deserves it or needs it. And in the end, they let us do it, and it was very successful, and it was really a mixture of, you know, it wasn't that season girls or because it's a women's magazine or whatever, but then you don't really see it. And as you said, if advertisers, they don't want you to use their campaign 2 seasons later because of obvious reason. They've changed their mind, they've changed their image, and they don't want you to show clothes that are not in store anymore, which I also understand commercially. But so how do we, when people talk about, oh, let's eliminate season, let's eliminate genders, but then how does it work commercially? You know, you still have to turn around the stock, and
I think
you don't want magazines, to publicize something you don't sell anymore.
Yes.
So how does it work?
I mean, I think seasons are super important for us. I mean, like, we need that, like, 6 months to, like, promote the brand or promote, like, you know, using editorials and everything. And I think that's why we have the seasons. It has, like, that little frame.
It's criticality to that
and,
as
like,
well.
production, in terms of production, like, obviously, you cannot be like, oh, we're going to show it, and then next day, all the production people are, like, going crazy because they're like, oh. So,
and that kind of goes back to limitations as well, actually, what we were speaking about earlier, which I think is important. The seasons are kind of a wider limitation that we all have. And it's the same for us as well. Like we have to make sure that the magazine is out between, you know, these 3 months and that season, and those 3 months and that season. Otherwise
it's irrelevant.
Yeah, because all the clothes inside
That's
have
a
that
limitation,
season.
though.
It's a big limit. Yeah, it's annoying for me because I'm not, you know, Patricia, who's our fashion director, you know, for her, it's kind of like, that's her way of structuring her year and figuring everything out.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I'm just like, oh, I wish it wasn't. But, you know, that's... You
So
know, it's not
seasonless
mine.
actually means more in the brand about just using the fabrics you want in the season you want, and you know, crop tops in winter, or fur, fake fur in summer, or whatever.
And giving
right?
time as well, like you said about production, you know, because from a brand's perspective, like production is a massive job to do, and you need that time. It would be a disaster of not having any structure, any rule, any timing, any deadline to follow, and the factory and the chain follows all these rules. It's fundamental because it's like it's a huge monster production.
So for you, it would be a disaster if the system changed, and it will not. So
I don't know if it would be a
not.
disaster, but of course there would be like some big changing in structure and in factory manufacturing, and where do you produce and who do you produce, because everybody is aligned right now. You know, they produce the yarn, they produce the fabric, they show the fabric, you buy the fabric, you make your show, you rebuy the fabric for the production, and then you produce the clothes you sold. So there is a chain, and if something jump away from that chain, what can happen?
Yeah, that's very clear.
If it's in the same time frames, then essentially it could be seasonless, and as long as it's shown at the same time. And it's looked more in terms of a 12-month schedule as opposed to we show this season in January, February, March. We show this season. You know, it really, because it's structure that is essential here, really, as opposed to whether it's about seasonal clothing or not. It seems.
Yeah.
That's a good point. It's weird because, you know, there are all these talks about changing the system, but actually probably what I like to say is that don't fix it if it's not broken. You know, whatever was broken, I think we are fixing it. I mean, you, especially the younger designers, are fixing it by designing in a different way and choosing different path. But and the seasons would be there, right? They would be there to stay.
They'll be. I think it's crucial to have this.
Also, it gets hot and it gets cold.
Yes, true.
So you don't have to, you know.
So
even if according to buyer doesn't get so cold anymore, because always like winter collection seems to me that people are always requesting more lighter garments.
especially when first of all, it is not this cold anymore, but there is also a southern hemisphere where
exactly. When you start to break through your distribution, you start selling in the Middle East, you start selling in Australia, you're selling it in America.
But even in Rome,
it's hot till November.
Here, so they, you know, so I guess that's I mean, and also since the seasons became shorter and shorter, it was quite ridiculous to see, you know, like fur in August and t-shirts in December. But anyway, that's a little bit changing. We have a few minutes left, and I would like to have a final word on Per. And for me, it's wondering, I think so, but for me, I'm asking you, is this one of the designers that will succeed, and is he sustainable in the long term?
I've got a few thoughts on that. I think that he's really, I mean, what I think is it's a really beautiful selection of clothes, and clearly there's a great sense of detail. I can see the sellability of it like instantly, and I also really think that for me it's really interesting to see the set as well. I think that one of the things that is really important for young designers is kind of, you know, there are so many of us all doing similar things. How do we stand out? What do we need to do to stand out? Because half of the game is the kind of the press and how people perceive the brand. So, you know, I think that if he continues in this way and kind of, because the clothes for me are clear, it's getting more and more refined as it's kind of going along. Like one of the things I wrote here was, it seems more refined and confident. And my kind of key things, obviously denim, prints, I can't read my own writing, combination between fluid and restriction in terms of the tighter.
Very interesting, yeah.
You know, and I think that it's clear that he's working towards that kind of more commercial market, so I can't see why it wouldn't.
There feels to be like a longevity, which I appreciate about what Per is doing, a longevity with the distribution, a longevity with the design. You know, he's just started to drop new pieces in. He's building up the range of his collections. But what I love about it, there's always something that's a bit vulgar. There's always something that looks like comes from a charity shop. This leopard print muff.
So vulgar in the Latin sense of the word, like
just a bit.
Yeah.
Oh, it's compelling. You know, you don't really think it's disgusting, but you can't stop looking at it. It's fascinating, and I love that. And he knows what he's doing, and I think he's going to be very successful.
He knows what he's doing for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a strong sense of identity as well with this collection. I think.
And that's for you. It's something that will make him more and more successful.
That's one of the maybe the A key of success.
Well, it hasn't faltered, has it? Like through his whole journey, it doesn't seem to have faltered.
Well, I hear the word authenticity in the back of my head.
It's like sharpening.
Something I believe in.
It's like sharpening his identity show after show, which is incredible.
I mean, I think this show was like super powerful for me. I mean, like as a buyer's point of view, you know, I've seen his collections, and this one really like, there's so many little bits that you can see as his brand identity, you know, with the denim, with like the inside out kind of thing and the raw edges. But then this collection, he really made it very, it's like kind of graduated, you know, he kind of really like made it modern, you know, with the tailoring and with the accessories. You know, like the accessories are like one of my most favorite pieces. It was very standout for me. And I think the way that he's going is like gonna be very powerful because this collection is very sellable, it's very profitable, and it's a very exciting collection to buy for next season.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mimma.